Today we're going to make our very own adjustable shape for Tinkercad using Codeblocks. So let's get cracking. So here is a quick preview. Check this out. I have got a shape that I can now drag the sliders, adjust the radius, adjust the number of holes, and I can make this do whatever I want. It is crazy how simple it is and how much fun it is to make our own shapes using Codeblocks. I'm going to show you quickly. It's stored in my creations. I can bring it out and I can instantly adjust it to do whatever I want. Change the size, change the radius, make the hole larger, and friends, we are in control of all of it. Let me show you how. Step one is to get to my digital library. You can do that by typing bit.ly/HLMTDL and pressing enter. This is a Google Sheet that I have several tabs of my favorite tutorials on. I update it all the time. You can check notes over here. This is where I add stuff as well. If you grab this link and drop it on your toolbar, you will always have access to it. I'm going to hit edit. I like to make these shorter. I'm going to call this one DL to save real estate on the bar. I'm going to go to full screen now that I've shown you that. Of course, I want to highlight there are all sorts of levels: sketch, sketch revolve, fidgets, flexi, SVG tips. I'm going to show you real quickly. My Codeblocks tutorials are back here on level 5. I will have more here. I do want to highlight the variable missing video. Tinkercad adjusted where we make variables. This one gets you started if you're using one of my older tutorials. Now today we're going to go to level 4. Under free files, we've got the Codblocks circle. And when you click this link, it'll take you right to my design. Of course, it is set to copy and tinker, so please remember the golden rule of Tinkercad: give a reaction before you copy and tinker. If this is your first time seeing Tinkercad Codeblocks, this is the shape panel. We have got bits of code that we can drop in to make something happen. These are variables that make this cool shape. If I hit play, you can see it slowly build. First, it brings out a cylinder, then it adds the holes based on the math that I had dropped in here. Back when this was built, if I changed these numbers, it adjusted them. You can see I've got the words tutorial included. This is all getting scrapped. Let me show you how. If we just grab these and bring them over here, it throws them out. We can also rename the project. Yours will say copy, but we're going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff and just put a 26 after it. I do want that space just because I think it's a little cleaner. So once again, I brought out a cylinder. This is what it looks like when you add a shape. See how it's collapsed, but I can change the radius, the height, the sides, and give it edge and edge steps. I don't want that one, so I'm throwing it away, and I'm going to reconnect the parts here where I had that part come out. I used the variable for radius and the variable for height, and then I used a move command to raise the height by height divided by 2. I'll show you real quickly. Whenever a part draws in Tinkercad, it places it at 0, 0. So by me changing this height to height divided by 2, that raises it up so it's at 0 on the work plane. This is just a preference of mine. This is a part where it's a math part. It's whatever this box is by this box. And I took my height variable and I dropped it in. These always drop in on the left edge. So now I'm going to grab this entire part, and where Z was the number 10, I'm putting the left edge there. So the math happens. Now, if you want to do this full tutorial, this bit.ly right here will take you to it and walk you through the steps. I wanted to make today's project a little more efficient, so I'm letting you build from mine. So here's step 1. I'm breaking apart these variables. I'm grabbing my create where it has the math, and I'm just throwing it away. Boom, it's gone. But now we're going to come over here to controls. I'm going to create a control. I want to take that R, which is the radius. I'm going to label it radius, and then I'm going to put in radius of the main cylinder. I'm going to leave the minimum at 0. I'm going to leave the maximum at 100. I'm going to set the default for 30. You can pick any numbers you want. You could say non-integers as well, but I'm going to stick to integers for this project. And I'm going to add the control. I'm going to grab that control and make it 55. When I hit speed play, we get this awesome shape. So now let's make this a lot smarter. I put in some silly math just so I could show users how this worked. Now we're gonna make it actually a really smart tool. So this second part right here is the whole, which I built with these little math pieces. I just made up r divided by 5 just for fun. You could have typed in a real number, but now we're gonna make that a new variable. I'm throwing this away and we're gonna simply move to variables and we're gonna create a new variable. This is going to be called whole radius. Once we create it, we can now put it in that spot. Of course, we need to decide what that number is. We're going to do that with the inspector. Bring it down. Make sure you like your label. Of course, give a description. I'm going to leave those max and minimum. We can, of course, as you see, make silly shapes, but that's where you'll adjust the numbers and find what you want. I'm going to choose 10 for my default. Now when I change this number, real quickly I'll hit play, and you can see that now it does a size 10 hole in our same project. The other silly number I had was how we moved X. I'm just gonna throw that away. We're gonna create a new variable. We're gonna call this one gap and hit create. Now we simply come down here to X and we put that gap in there. Of course, same steps over here. Add the gap control. I labeled it gap. The description is the gap from the center and it's to the center of the hole. And I'm gonna just put a 15 here and hit add control. I'm gonna set the gap to something like 20. And if we hit play, bingo, our shapes are all spaced out. Increase the gap, fast forward play again, which you can also do with the space bar. And now our shape is getting more and more efficient. How cool is that? Next up, we need to get these variables added. I'm going to throw away height and I'm going to throw away the n variable. And we're going to simply add those controls. There's my h. I filled in my description, set my default, and add the control. We're also going to go over here and we're going to add n is the number of holes, and I'm going to add the control. Now notice here, I did not retype those names. We can go back and fix that. So I'm going to make this one by hitting edit. I do want it to be height. And then I also want this to be number of holes. We can also drag these to different locations. So I want the height to be up top. I want the number of holes to be up top. Then it'll be the whole radius and then the gaps. So I'm able to build my control the way I want. All right, so this is where I'm going to stop us, but I am going to challenge you. Make variables for edge and edge steps so that you can also bevel these with the inspector. I think it'll be super cool, and hopefully you understand the skills, how easy it is to create the variable, drop them into the spots, and make something magical. Which leads me to this next piece. Check this out. We can share this as a Codeblocks shape. Once you click here, it asks for the name. I'm going to call mine even circle. You could give a description, you could give tags, and I'm going to simply save the shape. Can't see much happen there except that it does tell us it was successful. The next step is to bounce back to the Tinkercad dashboard, and then we're going to create a brand new 3D design. Last time we did Codeblocks, now it's a 3D design. I always start by naming them. I'm going to just tell you to name this one Wow, and here we go. Instead of basic shapes, go to your creations, and there is our fantastic new shape. When you bring it out, the handles are there, and they instantly work. We can drag these to different spots, and it automatically makes a new part that quickly. Adding holes, it's just instant compared to how normal grouping happens in Tinkercad. You can bring them out again and again and reuse them for different shapes. It is a fantastic way to make crazy parts. Notice I made that one too big and it didn't work, so then I had to adjust it so that we can make it do what it wanted. You can go through and make these as complex as you want in Codblocks, and then boom, bring them to Tinkercad and reuse them again and again. So of course, I think these are going to be fantastic, and if you make mine more epic by adding those other variables, let me show you how you can share them with the world. first bounce back and we've got to find the Codeblocks design. So usually we're in the 3D design mode, switch to Codeblocks, find the one that you're proud of, hit the properties. Of course, give it a name, add some properties, give it some tags, and then the real key is to make it public, or you could send a user a share link. As long as it is share a link and you save the changes, of course, you got to prove you're not a robot. When you hit save changes, they will now be able to grab those projects and work with them. Now, today, these are locking on public pending. So I'm going to just go back to the share link because I do know that that does work. And when you save changes, then bingo, users will be able to use that if you give them the link. You can find those links by simply clicking right here and choosing copy. And then of course, as long as they've followed this tutorial, they'll understand how to add the new Tinkercad controls. A quick wrap up. Of course, I am super excited to be able to see Codblocks put to use this way. I think it is so cool to use a little bit of programming knowledge and make smart shapes that we can use in our Tinkercad creations. The limits are really only bound by your imagination. Of course, if you do make something awesome, please take time to make it public or share it with me via any of the ways that you can find me. I would love to see just how cool these can get. I do want to quickly say thank you to everybody that supports me via YouTube memberships. There are 3 levels of support starting as low as $5 a month. With any level of support, you get early access to videos. Make sure you also pay attention for those members only posts. A massive shout out as well to everybody that supports me via Patreon. Love how that group is growing. It is a fantastic free messaging area. You can ask questions, post designs, gain skills. Of course, you can learn more with the bit.ly up above or the link in the description. Finally, friends, I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget, every time you like, hype, share a video, add a comment down below, or click subscribe, you're helping HLModTech get just a little bigger, which absolutely makes my day. Friends, have a glorious day, and keep tinkering.